Hey everybody, I think I'm live. Oh, I look like a wretchedness. It's raining outside. Let's see. I'm still getting used to this webcam one. Let me pop us out. Oh, there's Shanti, there's Sherry. I finally got here before you, first time. Let me know, somebody, if you can actually see me, because this one lets people get on before I'm actually on, and so if you somebody let me know when you actually see me, it would be helpful. Okay, thank you, Sherry, because I know you're talking to each other, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're talking to me. So let me pop out. Just let me pop out the chat. Yep, pop out chat. All right. That's what I like, because then I can put that right underneath the webcam. Okay. There's Sherry Bug and Christina. And Ida has never been here before. Welcome, Ida. I'm going to try to clean my glasses. No, I have not found my glasses. Yes, it's driving me insane. No, don't hire me to find lost objects, because clearly that's not going to happen. But they're here somewhere. I guess I haven't really put a lot of effort into it because I know they're in my house or my apartment. And my apartment's very small. So they're in here somewhere. So I don't stress about it too much. But I would really like, there's my kitchen. I saw something with frames on it, but they were scissors, my kitchen scissors. Why my kitchen scissors are in here, I have no clue. Here we go. Now I can see. Yeah. I don't take these out in the car. They're my reading glasses, and I only use them at the computer. So they're never in the car because I can't see with them. If I'm like trying to walk around, it makes me instantly nauseous. Unless now, let's be fair, Sherry Bug, they could be been on my head and I walked out, because, you know, I often have multiple glasses on my head. Let me mute my phone. Anyways, Chris, you're so great. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Chris, and thank you. 51. I've got coffee and Coke here. We are double caffeinating it. Coffee with pumpkin spice and Coke Zero, because, you know, it's that kind of a day. Yesterday was my birthday, Mr. Jones, JB, but thank you so much. Let's see. I'm scrolling back. Bunny Kisses. If you could, Miss Bunny Kisses, hello to you. If you could save that for the second hour and remind me of that question, or if maybe Mr. Jones or Nikki could screenshot that so we can remember. I'm going to try to stay focused. So if you are new to chat or returning and have been away for a little while, we have started doing the first hour of chat on a specific topic. And then the second hour of chat, we go into our random craziness, right? And so we're going to start this topic for this week is about past lives and reincarnation and what people think about that. What do you feel about reincarnation? And just talk about those things in general. Miss Anna Teresa, who probably won't be on here today. She's usually on Saturdays. But anyways, she had asked me about whether that could be a topic. And I was like, sure, I love to talk about reincarnation and past lives. And so that's what we're going to be talking about for the first hour. And then we will just go random. So if I don't answer a question or don't see your question, is because I'm trying to stay focused, and we can come back around to it. Don't, feel free to remind me in the second hour of whatever question that you asked. So without further ado, let's talk about reincarnation. Now, again, these chats are not meant to be like, covering everything that there could possibly be to cover on a topic, but just to talk about what I think about it, what I feel about it, and get what people feel about it themselves, and just kind of start thinking about it and chewing it over, these topics. So don't expect this to be the be all and end all of how I can definitively tell you that reincarnation is real. Because A, that can't happen, and B, that's not the purpose of this video. So, oh, nice. Miss Nikki cannot stay for very long because she has a date sitting on the sofa. He is cute. It's probably her hands. No, I don't want to say that, but are we talking about somebody here, or are we talking about your live-in gorgeous handsomeness that you have there? I know. That's what I'm wondering, Chris. But you know what? It might be a date. We shouldn't assume such things. In my opinion, if you have short sight, you better. Well, I have glasses that have a combination. I have 2 pairs of glasses. So we're not going to get sidetracked, but I do have 2 pairs of glasses. I have another pair of glasses because I actually have far seeing and near seeing problems, and so I have a regular pair of glasses that allows me to drive and see things, and then I have another pair for seeing things up close. So I have 2 pairs of glasses because I don't want to wear bifocals. Okay, back to the topic at hand of reincarnation. I pretty much have always, I'm trying to think back rationally, but I have, as far as I can remember, really thinking about such things as what happens after death and things of that nature. Obviously, you all know that I was raised that have watched my channel. I know I feel like I have to fast forward, although some people don't. So I have to also give the information. I was raised a really comfortable Catholic as a young child. We only went when we were at my grandparents' house, went to my grandparents. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe when I was younger, the masses were still being said in this little church that I went to. The masses were still being said in Latin. They weren't like the, later I took my grandma to churches when she was up here, like she'd need to go to mass, and I would take her, and they were more like, little messages and things like that. The church that I went to was much more of that beautiful ritual, and I was young, and we only went with my grandparents, and so the whole thing was just beautiful. I don't even think I knew anything about heaven and hell at the time, to be honest, or purgatory or anything. It was just something that we did, and there was a beautiful ritual to it. So I don't remember ever thinking about what happens after death at that point. When I was in 5th grade, or around 5th grade, my parents got saved into a fundamental Christian religion. I really do want to stress this because my experience with Christianity was not a comfortable one, and it was not a average person's experience with Christianity. It was fundamentalist, which means extremist. I guess you can put that in there. It was like to the far ends of extremists. So we didn't celebrate holidays. We didn't go to movies. We didn't listen to rock music. We didn't wear pants. It was the far end of things. So I just want to be clear about that. But this instantly, and this is important in this conversation, because this instantly went from comfortable Catholic, beautiful ritual. Again, not everybody has comfortable Catholic experience. My experience with Catholicism was very comfortable, ritual, beautiful. It felt safe. It was just a great place. It was where I went with my grandparents. So it was a very good experience. And then went into instantly, the very first service that I ever went to outside of that was a hellfire damnation, literal, like you are going to burn in a lake of fire. Maggots will be eating your bones for all eternity. There are voices, if you be quiet and listen quietly, you can hear like the people's voices screaming, from the pits of hell. It was a full on hellfire damnation kind of message, and it scared the shit out of me. Literally, I had a very good imagination. I was a very much a reader, writer. I loved books. I was constantly in the realm of story, and so I had a very good imagination, and that just terrified me, like absolutely terrified me. And so that anything they would have said to do to avoid going there, I would have done. I was terrified. If they would have said, you need to walk up the aisle, spin around 3 times, stand on your head, do a flip and say the, whatever kind of prayer, I would have done it because I was terrified. So all of a sudden going from really no concept or really thinking or worrying about what happens after you're dead, to being absolutely terrified of death, because it sounded like absolutely horrible. And so that was my experience with realizing that there was something that we would even think about what would happen after death. And then it was being very, very, very violent to the extreme. It was very extreme. I cannot tell you as much how extreme. I pulled my daughter out of a service after I was out of it, but she was going with her father, where they literally said that you could hear the screams of children from hell, which is like, come on now. It's already bad enough you're talking about the adults, but now you're talking about children. Again, extremists of any religion are extremists and problematic. But that was my experience. So then it was a lifetime, I'm saying a little lifetime. So 5th grade and start to get into high school, right? Where you're starting to really start to think about these things and process these things. And I'm a very logic-based person. I'm a very questioning-based person. I'm a very skeptical person in some degrees. However, at the same time, you're being told in an extreme religion, in a fundamental religion, you're not encouraged to ask questions, obviously, because most of these things aren't going to hold up under questioning, in my opinion. So you're not really, the desire is not there to be, they don't want people that are questioning. But in my head, I was constantly questioning these things. Like, it didn't make sense to me, because if on one hand, you're trying to tell me all of these wonderful things about God and all how wonderful he is and how amazing he is and all of this kind of stuff, right? When you're being told this stuff, but then you're being told these horrible things about hell, and read the Old Testament. It's a pretty scary place to read, right? That's literal. So when you've got those two things, they don't match, right? They don't line up. And so my logic was, this doesn't make sense. Like, how could, say, somebody who never heard anything about Jesus, could never say the Lord, the actual prayer of salvation, because this again was very fundamental. So you had to understand that Jesus died for your sins. You had to say this prayer so that you can get saved. It was very specific. And it was a job of Christians, obviously, to go out and tell people that, because if you didn't tell people that and they died without knowing that, they could go to hell. And that would be on your, that's on your shoulders, because you didn't give them the knowledge that they needed. And so then it's like, okay, how do I, as a person, say that as a young preteen all the way up, how do I bring these things together and say, you're saying that if somebody dies and they don't know this, they're going to burn in hell forever? That doesn't make sense. That God, who's supposed to be, it was very much so. I agree, divination. I fully agree. I think most fundamental religions have much in alignment with cult mindsets, whether they go into the full cult or not. The mental mindsets are there. Anyways, that is a whole other topic. And the only reason I'm talking about this is I think it's important, because this is how that progress of thinking about where things are in the brain, moving from that there is even an afterlife, what that afterlife would look like. So So in my head, I was like, that doesn't even work. Like, you can't have a God who's all wonderful, all compassionate, cares for you, supports you, and at the same time believe that. So then in my head, I thought, okay, well, let's say reincarnation is true because it's in the Bible. And again, I'm not gonna go into long details, but it is in the Bible. The concept of somebody being reborn is in the Bible. The concept of, and I was one of those people who read the Bible, and I will say that's one thing I do appreciate about my upbringing is that there's a lot of people who say that they're Christians who've never read the Bible from cover to cover. And I do think it's a bit of a travesty. You have to know what it is that you are believing and how are you going to process that sacred text. But there's a lot of people who have never done that. And I've read it cover to cover 9 times, and who knows how many times all of the other various ways. And so yes, exactly, Corey. There is a lot of reincarnation in the Bible. It's very clear. Oh, this must be, there's references of, and now I'm going to mess them up because it's been a very long time, but there's references of, say, John the Baptist, like this must be John the Baptist reborn, or this must be so-and-so reborn. And it's very casual, as if the idea is, of course, this is possible because this happens, right? So there's this very comfortability with the idea of people being reborn in the Bible that I picked up on as a young person. Certainly was never talked about, but it's something that I picked up on, and I thought, well, okay, that makes more sense, right? In a religious world in which a lot of stuff didn't make sense, that made sense to me because I thought, all right, if somebody's got multiple lifetimes to try to work out this problem of the afterlife and heaven and hell and all these kinds of things, and then at the end of the whole shebang, if you haven't figured it out, you're going to be separated from God versus with God. I was like, my brain could at least wrap itself around that and say, that makes a lot of sense to me that we have multiple tries. So even before I was outside of that religious mindset, that was the only thing that made sense. Of course, I never talked about it. That was not something that could be discussed in the place that I was at. But that was, to me, it was like, okay, that makes sense. I can work with this. It clicked, that feeling of, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And so then as I got out of that particular religion when I was in 11th grade in high school. And I had written a really long letter to the head of the church about how pretty much how I felt like they had completely missed the mark and had done severe damage to a lot of people. I was in 11th grade. I don't know how old that is. I graduated at 17, so I would have been 16. And I wrote this long letter and said, look, you guys are screwing things up royally. And whatever and whoever God is, when you do come face to face with God, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. I just kind of left it as like I feel sorry for you when you meet what is divinity, because I think that the weight of how wrong you are is going to hit. And then stopped going to that particular church. But I was still within Christianity, but just stopped going to that particular brand. And then when I got married right out of high school, as people did, especially religious people. And so when my son was born, again, we're not going to hit on, I'm trying to go quickly, but my son was born really sick, right? So very, very ill, was misdiagnosed, but he had a genetic defect, bone marrow defect. Also affected his bones, and his rib cage was malformed and things like that. So he had genetic defects. And in that religion, there was that concept of, and this is what's so interesting, right? Because, they don't purport reincarnation or rebirth, but some of those concepts are there in a negative way. The negative concepts are there. So the idea is, okay, well, what did you do that caused your son to be born this way? And there's even a verse in the Bible where somebody's born blind, and because again, went through all of this as I struggled with that. I had people telling me there was something that I did wrong that caused this. Most likely premarital sex, right? So that was a big thing, right? And I'm thinking to myself, again, I was very logic minded, but when you're surrounded only by one way of thinking, it's the danger of only surrounding yourself with one way of thinking. So if you're immersed in a world, didn't have a television, we didn't have, there's no television, we didn't have radios, everybody I knew thought the same way. It's very easy to be, it's very difficult to pull your brain up and outside of those things, because everything that you've ever heard and everybody around you echoing the same thing. It's such a dangerous thing. Even if you're solid in what you believe, especially if you're solid in what you believe, it's so important to have people around you that believe different things, because it allows your brain to expand, right? But when somebody's telling you that, and that's all you know, my brain fought against it at the same time as like, oh shit, like, sorry, I know, because I don't try not to cuss on this channel, but like, it really was that, like, oh, okay, well, but then my logic brain was like, if that was the case, like, there would be a lot more sick children in the world if premarital sex caused children to be born with birth defects. Like, there would be a lot more sick people in the world, than there are. But to have people that are supposed to be your closest people telling you that kind of stuff is so shocking, right? And so damaging to have that. And that's when I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I literally told God, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you are. I don't know anything about this, but you stay over here. I got to deal with my son who is sick, who they're telling me constantly he's going to die. I got to deal with this stuff, and I'm 21 years old, and I can't deal with you. I can't deal with these people. I'm done. You stay over there. I'll stay over here. Just stay, we'll come back and deal with this later, kind of thing. But there is that concept brought in of, did you do something, or did this person, my son in a past life, do something to cause him to be born this way, right? And this is something that there are other religions beyond Christianity, and I don't know those religions, so I'm not going to talk about those today, right? But there are other religions and other mindsets that will take reincarnation or take the idea of past lives to say, if you see somebody on the street who's suffering, well, that's their fault. They did something in a past life, and so now this is their payment for this. And that can get really dangerous and can get really problematic in how we have compassion and empathy for other people. So, anybody can take concepts such as heaven and hell, such as reincarnation, because let's talk about past lives, but we're talking about really major things of what happens after death, like what happens outside of this physical body that we're in, what happened before, what happened after, right? So these are huge issues, and any group of people can come together, even whether you're talking about hell, heaven, or hell, or you're talking about reincarnation. These topics can be taken to extremes and used to justify mistreatment and things of that nature. So obviously at that point there was a disconnect from that, but there was still that interest in why, right? As a mother, if you are, and I know other people, I know Sherry knows, and there's a lot of other people that know, if you have a child that's born with a genetic problem, and a severe problem that's going to affect how long they're going to live, it's going to affect their quality of life, it's going to affect everything surrounding your life. The question of why is such a big question. Like, why does this happen? Why is that child over there walking down the street, all cares and, no cares in the world. Their parents are just enjoying life with this child. And there's no problems. Why is that child getting that experience in life, and that mother and that getting that experience in life? And I'm experiencing this really hard space, and my child is experiencing this horrible pain and all the things that he's having to deal with as a baby who's had no experiences in life other than these. That question of why is huge, and is something that eventually I had to let go of. And I've talked about that in other videos, that having to let go of the why was about the only way for me to keep my sanity. But because of that desire for why, that, of course, because I'm a Libra brain, I'm a research brain, it's like full on then research mode, right? Okay, let's say somebody's over here saying that he could have done something, and now this is what he has to deal with in this life. Some people are saying this is something you did, and now this is something that you have to deal with in your life. There is also the idea of reincarnating in groups, so that perhaps there is a karmic debt to the soul that was my son's, and so we reincarnated together as me taking care of that particular child, because we are connected in ways that go beyond just this one experience. All kinds of interesting things. And so I started researching that. There's a interesting doctor, I don't know what he was, but I think his name is Ian Stevenson. And he did a lot of studies on children with past life memories, right? Children who at the age of being able to speak would talk about other families. You're not my mother. You're somebody. I'm somebody else's my mom, or I am so and so, and I should go and I need to go live with these other people. So they have memories of past life at a young age. And so, of course, that's going to be really, a lot of work to try to sift through what are actual past life memories for this child versus things that have been planted, or just things they might have picked up, or just a really great imagination, these kinds of things. So he did a lot of studies on past life. So I read a lot of books about those types of things. Also of the idea of so having the near-death experiences, because that again is asking that question of, okay, well, what happens after we're dead? So lots and lots of research into reincarnation and near-death experiences and all those kinds of things. Went with that before I finally let go of the why, because what I came to understand is that when it comes to what happens after we die, or what happened before we die, right? There's no such thing as, in my opinion, you can get lots of studies and all that, but in my opinion, there is zero proof, right? Until we experience it, until we die and experience that, whatever it is that we're going to experience. There's no hard, fast proof that anybody's ever going to be able to hand you that says definitively, this is what happened to you before you died, and this is and before this life, and this is what's going to happen to you after you go into the next life. So all of this falls under the category of belief, right? This all goes under the category of what your worldview is, how you see the world moving and functioning, how you see things working, and what you believe is going to happen afterwards. There's no proof, right? And so my believing one thing isn't going to change the reality for you. There's also a lot of conversations about that too, that we form our own reality. Like, what is reality? And so your reality based on your beliefs and your worldview, after death might look very different than mine because I have a completely different belief. That goes into the really interesting thing, right? It goes into a very interesting concept of what is reality and how do we create our reality by our strong beliefs and things like that, right? So and that to me is a fascinating thing as well. But anyways, so personally, after all of that rambling, and I know this probably seemed completely off topic, but at the end of all that for me, right? So at the end, two things came at the end of the comfortable Catholic to the fundamental fire and brimstone fundamental Protestant religion to the just espousing of religion as a whole, and then just kind of going on to my own path to where I am now, culminates in me believing in reincarnation. It's probably one of the few things that I feel very, very comfortable and very strong in. I don't believe that this experience in life is the only experience that my soul, if you want to call it, that my whatever comprises of who I am, it's not the only experience that I have had, and it's not the last experience that I'm going to have. I feel very confident. In a personal level, I feel very confident in that. What somebody else believes, to me, is completely irrelevant, right? It's not my job to convince somebody that the way they believe is right or wrong. It is their job. It's their life journey to figure out what it is that they believe, you believe, right? Whatever how we process what it means to be human, what it means to exist in this world and what came before that, what it means to be human looking into, because we are finite, right? We are born dying. As soon as we're born, cells are processing and we are on a path towards physical death. That's just part of our existence in the world. It's just this natural part of life on this planet that we are going to experience what happens next. And so, so that it's a big question that we have to sort out, and I can never, it's not my job, nor should it be my job to try to tell somebody how to process that and figure out what they are. For myself, I do believe that that my soul has existed before now, and my soul, and I use soul as a loose term, but the energy that is me will continue on and have another experience after this one is done. Now, there's all kinds of stuff, though. Okay, so then let's say you get to, right? You get to the point where you're like, okay, yeah, reincarnation makes sense to me, right? Rebirth. It makes sense when you look at the world, and the whole world is full of these cycles of growing and dying and going back into the earth and coming back up again. These cycles are something that we see all around them. And so for me, it makes a lot of sense that we continue on in that cyclical pattern. But then what does that mean afterwards? There's a really great set of books. I read this as probably in my 20s as a young adult. There's a great set of books by Catherine Kerr, Kerr, and she writes a series of books. These are novels. These are not books on reincarnation, but I absolutely love this question, because the first book is called Dagger Spell. And so it starts with this group of people, right? And I'm not going to give anything away, but some things occur in this book, in this first book. And there are some things that occur, and there's magic involved, and, working with magic and all this other kind of stuff involved. It's just a fantasy. They're fantasy books. They're fantastic. But there's something happens that connects these people. And so the rest of the books in the series, and there's a lot of books in the series, is just over lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, these people in different figurations of who they are, except for this one. One is stuck to know everything, but the rest of them are having to try to come back together. They're reincarnating in groups and needing to come back together to work things out across this whole book series. Yes, it is The Devery Cycles by Catherine Kerr, and the first book is Dagger Spell. So it's just great. So I read that again in my 20s, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so fantastic. And it's so interesting. You meet people sometimes where you think, surely I've known this person for more than this. There's just that connection or that feeling of, I've known this person before. We've interacted before in some way, or there's is there a new one coming out? Mr. Jones, I got to catch up then. I might have missed a couple. Thank you, Mr. Jones. But anyways, great, again, fantasy, but it's so interesting. So there's so much a wealth of thing. Like, do people kind of find the people that they've known in a past life that they've had experience? That's something I actually do very much believe. I do actually have past life memories that I believe are past life memories. I have had a near-death experience. And so that solidifies some things for me personally, and I have some very strong reoccurring memories, and it's not single, or it's not. There are people that go through that. So I do believe that we can meet up with other people that we have had experiences before in other lifetimes, which I think is really cool. That's interesting. Whether we do it in groups is interesting. I do agree, I'm sorry, I know I'm missing most things, but I do think that there is some books, that fantasy books, that they're working out, because that's the place in which you can work out these kinds of questions, right? And so there are books that I think that's true of all books, right? There are truths to be found in all books. This is a truth of the person that's writing it and processing through and thinking through, processing these things like that. I believe that there is more truth to be found in story than to be found in fact. Right? That is a very core belief of mine. That's why for me, story has a capital S, because these stories that weave through different times, different places, different cultures, they're there for a reason. We're processing these things. We're thinking these things out. So yes, I personally, probably one of the longest running beliefs that I've had is in reincarnation. And what that but then, so there's two, I'm going to try to wrap this part up and then try to read what works. I know I'm missing a lot. So two parts is, one, I personally do believe that the energy of who I am existed before and will exist after. That's something that I personally believe. But the second part is that I truly believe that we will never know exactly what things are going to be like until we actually are back onto that part of the wheel where we have those memories back, right? So where we have that ability to process maybe between existences. And so I'm okay with that. I don't think that questions of life and death, questions of what happens between before and after, I don't think there's any hard, fast conclusions. And so I think a degree of accepting that we just have to roll with it, right? We just have to figure out what it is that we believe, see how our worldview is and how we process things, working that out throughout our lifetime. As Miss Veronica said, that's part of the whole point, right? For me, of being alive is for me to process, Kelly, to process these things out for myself. And that is the job of everybody else to process out for themselves and come to an idea of what they believe, but at the same time, understand that, we aren't going to have all of the answers, and become okay with the uncertainty, because there's a lot of uncertainty in spiritual beliefs, because there's a degree of faith, there's a degree of leap. There's a leap that has to be taken, right, in belief versus fact. We have to take at some point take various leaps, and that's okay, and getting comfortable with that is part of the process. People are saying where they're from. I'm not sure where that came from. I missed a topic there. I know that one of the questions are going to be, I do past life reading. So that's something that I do because I do very firmly believe, and I do believe that when you look at your birth chart, when you look at issues surrounding the moon, especially, so in a person's birth chart, the areas of the moon, what sign the moon is in, as well as the lunar nodes, especially the south node is where you're coming from, the north node is where you're going to. You can see, for what to me is not necessarily the past life of just before this one, but it's the one that has the greatest impact on the life that you're living right now. So that means there's something left over. There's something to be processed, particularly about that past life. And so that's why it's still kind of attached, so to speak, to the one that you are currently in. Again, these are how I see it. And so that can be really fascinating. That's something that you can get an idea of. There's a really good book by Judy Hall. She just reprinted not too long ago, called Past Life Astrology, which I absolutely love. Then there's the deck. So I know, again, I'm sorry, I try to remember everything I wanted to cover. I have been using this art history tarot for past lives. I've been loving this. I already did a walkthrough of this, so you can see the walkthrough that's up there. But I've actually used this for myself a lot, and I've shifted into all of my. When I do past life reading, there's a lot of decks that are involved, but one of the portions of it has. I just use this deck for the where and when and something important that's kind of brought through. So I knew somebody, when we get to the talking about random things, somebody was going to ask about decks. There are a couple decks out there in regards to past lives, like oracle decks. I've never found any of those to really resonate with me or be helpful to me. But the Art History Tarot for Past Lives deck, which is this one, I really do, I find it very helpful. Now, I will say this, and this is just my experience, I've used this deck for a while now, absolutely love it. For me, it comes off a little bit more like an oracle. This has kind of oracle terms at the top of the deck. Again, I have a walkthrough, so I'm not going to... I'm not gonna spend a lot of time because I have a walkthrough of it. But these keywords up at the top, I use those. I also, again, you use the timing and the place come into play with looking up the particular card that it's in. But I don't tend to really use it in terms of the tarot card. Again, this is a way, because I'm doing other things, right? I have a past life reading that I do that's from the Marie White guidebook for the Marielle. I also have an expansion of that with 3 cards, and I have another oracle reading that I do. So this is just a piece of the puzzle, but I tend to find this for me very useful as a past life reading deck, but it's used much more in an oracle sense than the actual different tarot cards in the traditional tarot meanings, if that makes sense. But this deck is called, so I've seen somebody ask it a couple times, it's called Art History Tarot for Past Lives. And I've just had fantastic experiences with this deck since the walkthrough. So you can find my walkthrough in my videos, but I have not stopped using it since, and I find it to be very useful if you are interested in working with. The only caveat I would say is that she uses continents as places, obviously, and then she also uses a couple countries in each of the continents. So, but it's not very many. It's just a couple continents per country, or a couple countries per continent. And for me, I don't find that to be very helpful because there's a lot of countries, and countries lines shift and change all the time. When you're talking about going back into the past, country lines are shifting, and names are shifting and changing all of the time. So I don't use it honing in into a specific country, either through the art or through the title. I just keep it to that broader area. So if it shows up, in France, then it's just that broader area that is there, whatever that might be during that time period. That's the only caveat I would say. And that's just the nature, I think, of, putting it onto a tarot deck where you only have a certain number of cards. And again, countries change, country lines change. And so you'd have to then have not only more modern country designations, but you'd have to have older country designations, and it could all get really, really messy. So I don't tend to. And again, when I do a past life reading, my purpose isn't to find out whether or not somebody was King Tut in a past life, but is to give an opportunity, because I don't believe time is linear, right? So part of my worldview is that I don't believe that, time is a straight line. I do believe everything is sort of cyclical and folding and moving and turning and spinning on this, amazing, great web that we're on. And so to have an opportunity for you in your past life, and I do this for myself a lot, to sit across the table and give a piece of advice or give information to you in this current life, that's to me what interests me about past life readings, not to find out, everybody in the world was not Cleopatra, right? Everybody in the world was not Queen Elizabeth in a past life. So yes, reincarnation, things like that can get really ridiculous, right? Can get really, or can we? Mr. Jones, but maybe we all were, because time is crazy and our experience is crazy. Maybe we all could be Queen Elizabeth in a past life. I don't know. But my point is what interests me more is that what are those lessons that were learned, right? What are the lessons that were learned? What are some of those things that we're still playing out that we're still playing these things out over and over again, perhaps because we haven't sorted through them and that kind of stuff. I do too. Mr. Jones brings up, there's so much topic. This is the problem. I mean, we're talking in these chats, right? We're talking about really big topics that have so much. And it's just really to get us thinking. I look at these chats, these topic chats as sort of, okay, this is kind of where I'm landing, because people have sent me a question about where I land on them. But then it's just to get us thinking about these things, right? You're going to stay younger if your brain is working and thinking over things, and to think about these things, I think is exciting. But yes, I do actually believe in ancestral DNA. When I work with ancestry, for me, it's DNA, it's genetic ancestry, it's ancestry of the land that I am on currently, that I was born on, that my feet are on. So I would work with ancestry of North America, the United States area, the northern part of the United States, where my feet are physically on. The ancestry of that land, genetic or otherwise, has an impact on me and my worldview. So working with ancestry, genetic ancestry, land ancestry, what is the ancestry of the land that I'm standing on? And then there's other, I would say maybe and I haven't come up quite with the third term, but this idea of that spiritual heritage. So if I'm interested in a particular spiritual practice, if I am author, the authors that have passed on that have had a huge impact on me, our ancestry that we can work with, right? So inspiration, ancestors of inspiration, right? That have had such an impact on who we are, whether they're from our land where our feet are on, or whether they're from our genetic history or not, they have had an impact. And so that's another thing, which is really, really cool. Hello, Miss Asset. I'm sorry, I'm still in the focus mode. I'm trying to see if I've missed anything directly regarding reincarnation. Moon Free, okay, this is an interesting question. What is your belief about soul splitting? Like, could multiple different people today have a common past life? I have definitely heard of that, which would kind of go into, could we all be, we could necessarily, when I said we can't all be Cleopatra, the end, Mr. Jones Davies saying, well, maybe we could, like, could we maybe have, or a bunch of us have experienced that? It's so interesting. Like I said, I don't think that these are things that we get to think about and chew about and all that kind of thing. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to these things. It's just fascinating. Like if I was studied Buddhism time, and so Buddhism in different, well, even that, if you take that, it's probably different types of Buddhism have different ideas of what reincarnation looks like, where there is this idea in Buddhism where your personality, so much to speak, isn't necessarily being reincarnated, but just sort of the essence of who you are. But then you have the Dalai Lama, who is able to remember, obviously, this full, complete life, not just the essence of love, the spark of life. So there's different ways of doing that. So could a soul split and be in more than one? Sure. My answer to that is anything's possible, right? Because I watched a video, and I don't know who, I can't tell you who it was by, and it was just a little clip by this one guy talking about reincarnation, but he talks about how who we are is just a reflection of how much life we were able to take in, right? So if you live a life, let's say, where you've taken in very little, right? You've done just nothing with your life. You were, probably doing bad things where you were just, your life was very small because of choices that you made, choices that other people made, this type of thing. You have this very small experience of life. You didn't open yourself up to more life by your choices. That then when you're reincarnated, right, that can go into then very small reincarnation. You have to start to do the work to open yourself up to be more and more life. Whereas if you live a life that you are pulling in life, right, you're open to life, you're pulling in experiences, you're open to the energy around you, you're doing the soul work of your spiritual path, all these kinds of things, you're broadening that bucket that you have of life. And so then that gets broader and broader as you go, which is totally off track of what you said, but that just something in there triggered that idea of, I just liked that concept of, grabbing as much life as you can grab. But as to whether or not a soul can split, I have absolutely no clue. Obviously, there's no right or wrong answers here. I think it's interesting to think about it. This is why I think I'm a baby soul, because I have too many questions. I don't know. I have billions of questions too, Sherry, and I definitely know that I am not. So, but I think but Moon Priestess Lucy, I think that the key here is how interesting a concept is that, right? How interesting a concept is it? Because anything's open for potential and for possibility. I think that one of the things, as kind of coming back full circle to where we started with my progression, right? Of going from this comfortable Catholic who had no concept of life and death because I was young and it was an easy, comfortable place, then going into a very severe, fundamental life and death was heaven and hell. That was it. Heaven, hell, bam, right? That is it. You go one place or the other. Yes, yes, sure. Don't let me forget to come back to that. I want to finish this thought. This very rigid idea of this is what happens and this is what happens, right? And one of the things that I think that always drew me about the concept of reincarnation and rebirth and these types of things is that the possibilities exploded, right? The possibilities open up when you step outside of rigid structures of this is and this isn't. All kinds of potentials explode. And I think that that's the biggest lesson for me. Yes, what dreams may come. That goes back to what we were talking or what I was babbling about, this idea that how much is what we believe, how much is the way that, how much of reality is centered around the way that we believe, right? The way that we see the world at the moment of death, how does that affect? I know quite a few people who really believe that what your belief about your after, what life, what heaven or hell is going to be for you is dependent on what you believe, strongly believe at the moment of death, which is so scary and fascinating at the same time. And that what dreams may come is just one of those that just kind of twist your mind around and makes you have to think, right? Think through these things. But I think that the key is, I guess for me, the key is, like with what Lucy was saying, is that when we don't lock things down, when we don't lock unknowable things, because I do believe that, and to some degree, on a scientific, factual basis, there are unknowable things. There are uncertainties that are there. Now, we each personally can come to certainties. Like I have a strong belief in souls not being, I don't believe that I didn't exist before this life, and I believe I'll continue to exist after this life. That's a very strong belief of mine. It's still just my belief. But keeping these things fluid and flexible, and our minds fluid and flexible on these things, expand possibilities versus restrict into this is and this isn't, on things that are so ephemeral because we don't have concrete. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is that we when we get to solidified in the way that we think, that kind of shuts down things, right? If we get really solidified into this is the way this is and this is the way this isn't, that kind of shuts down growth in some ways, right? It stops us from questioning, and it stops us from processing, and it stops us from reaching and stretching and growing. And we don't really want to stop growing and learning and expanding our worldview and expanding the way that our mind thinks and expanding our spirit and expanding our path. So even on something, so for me, that is a personal level, rebirth is such a primary belief for me. How the specifics of it, I'm open. Like I'm open to what does that look like? I know certain things for me because of memories and things of that nature that I have and near-death experiences that I had. So I know certain things to be true for me. But the rest of it, I think keeping it open and flexible is the point, that we can be open to experiencing more and more things, which I think is important for just not becoming dull people that just sit there and don't think at all. If people are fascinated, people do seem to be fascinating with the idea of soul splitting. I think there's so many things that could cause a split, right? Obviously, traumatic events could cause a split. Two people really being intertwined, or just the need, perhaps, for so much processing that you need a couple different more experiences to try to process those things. I don't know. I think that that, yeah, there's probably a lot of different things that could cause a soul to split. Is my point. I don't know if there is. I'm going to look into it, soul trap. I slip the trap, soul trap, soul trap. Oh no, Chris, are you a soul trap? Are you sucking all the souls? Do you have this little, oh, what is that? You know, have you seen the movie? Oh, that's with dreams. Have you seen them? There's a movie. It's it's an animated movie. It's a recent movie. It's really good. And there's a big giant and he's with a little girl and she happens to see him and he grabs her and takes her into the land of giants. Anyways, he collects dreams in a box. BFG, Mr. Jones, Davey. High five to Mr. Jones. I loved that movie. I don't know if anybody else saw that. Probably not, but I love that movie. I cannot. These are driving me. I'm gonna be forced. I'm gonna be forced to find my glasses because these are driving me nuts. But yeah, I just had this picture of Chris, which is Slip the Trap, and like in a little having this little space full of jars where he has all these little souls traps that he has trapped together. Oh yes, he goes to Buckingham Palace, Simon. Yep. So yeah, so in terms of books, again, for fantasy now, if you like fantasy novels, then definitely read Catherine Kerr's Devery series. I just think it's fascinating just to see these souls struggle lifetime after lifetime to remember who they are, to remake connections, to try to process something that is being processed. They were definitely books that sparked my mind thinking. So I've really enjoyed that. In terms of What Dreams May Come is really interesting in terms of, just that concept of how we believe and what we feel and what we believe at the moment of death reshaping the reality of our afterlife. That every one of us could actually have a different experience after death, which is so interesting and has so many things that we could run with, right? In terms of decks, the Art History Tarot for Past Lives is the only one that I really use. I use just regular tarot decks and oracle decks, but the only one that I use specifically about past lives is that deck. I've used it a ton. Absolutely love it. In terms of astrology, I highly recommend Judy Hall's Past Life astrology. I use that constantly. There was another version of this. This is the new version, which is Judy Hall's Past Life Astrology. She wrote another version of this. It's like, I don't know if this is an exact replica. It's just been reprinted. Look, I probably would say at the beginning, but I absolutely love this, and I use it when I go to do past life readings. I use this to kind of quickly zip through people's past lives. Or their birth charts. I'm sorry. I quickly filter through people's past lives. Yes, let's see. This looks like it originally came out in 2002. This edition was published in 2017. So yes, I really love that. There's also a great book, and I can't remember if I'm going to reread it. I think my friend Anna Torin sent this to me, and I believe I've read this in the past, but I need to reread it. This is called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian L. Weiss. But I can't recommend that one way or another because I can't remember the book. But trying to think if there's anything else. Those are the one books that I would recommend for sure, and both fictional and non-fictional. So Flatliners is interesting. Yeah, any of that, like near-death experience is again a whole nother topic, right? That is just that's always fascinated me. Had one, so definitely have experience with that. But that's something I think that really changes people, and it's so fascinating. But that's like it's a whole nother topic, I think. Although it keys in with this, right? Because it's talking about what happens after, right? When we do the next step of the road. So we're kind of talking about what happens before, and now near-death experience is obviously looking at that, peeking out that window of what happens right after. Do you do? No, I don't. We're just winging it, Chris. Because again, I don't look at these like now, if I'm going to go do a solid video on a topic, which I haven't done because again, that then takes a lot of work where I'm kind of sitting up here and saying, okay, this is the definitive, what I know, this is what I have, or I'm teaching about something. That's when I go into research mode. But these topics, these weeks are just more, let's talk about it. This is what I've kind of come up with in my own head through researching in the past and all that. This is where I land. Where do other people land? This is fascinating. Let's chew about it. Let's start thinking about it and processing it. Maybe find books that you like to read about it. Go out and start your own research on it. Yes, it's just based on my past experiences that have led to my current beliefs. That's kind of where I land with them. Past lives, obviously, is something I do continually work with just because I do the past life readings. So I'm always thinking about and working with past lives. So it fascinates me. But yes, that's how I approach these topics. And I try to say at the beginning, these are not supposed to be the definitive guide to XYZ, but random musings from my brain. Which can be a scary place, Chris. It can be a scary place. Okay, I'm shuffling the, people are like, what are you doing? This is the Art of Life. Which is the one we do our weekly readings on. That's kind of separates our first hour into our second hour. So I'm just pulling that for us. Sherry says she uses the Ghost Tarot. I do have the Ghost Tarot. I do like the Ghost Tarot. I've never used it. Like, it's really for past life readings, I just use any tarot deck and or oracle deck. Most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, I use the Darkness of Light tarot in combination with the Arcana Playing Cards tarot. So most of the time, I'm using these two decks for the tarot portion of my past life readings. It's just kind of worked out that way. It just kind of settled into a routine. But I don't think you need, like, I really don't believe that you need a specific deck for past lives in order to do past life readings. But at the same time, I do love this, and it has become very integral to, and again, more in the oracle sense of these upper things than really using it as a tarot deck. So I'm really using it as more of a past life oracle than a tarot deck, is what I'm trying to say. I really do love the scope of this, so I've enjoyed that. But that's the only deck that I have that is focused on. And I know that Doreen Virtue has, and I did look at it back a long time ago. I did look at the Past Lives Oracle from her. But all of them to me just kind of felt limiting to what I maybe needed them to do. Maybe because I'm really not... I'm really not focused so much on figuring out. The key for me is not knowing exactly where and when and who, right? That's not necessarily my goal. It's more to have the communication. And so a lot of the other past life oracles that I looked at really were focusing on where, when, and who, versus getting a message. And so getting the message can happen with any tarot deck, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense. No, I don't know if Tammy's asking me, but I have not done crime readings. No. Do you mean you can have multiple past life readings? Oh, I've definitely done multiple past life readings for myself, for sure. Because you can do past life readings on, like, let's say you're in a, and this is where I find it to be for my, this is now personal, so I'm not talking about my past life reading that I do in the shop, but in the personal sense of using how I would integrate past life reading with the current situation, I find to be really interesting. So if you really feel like there's a particular thing that you're stuck in a cycle on, right? So that sounds like somebody is fighting outside the window. You can't hear that. Anyways, you feel like you're just cycling through something and you just can't get yourself unstuck out of it. I do like to do readings where I pull from, just like you do past, present, and future, right? This is a current situation. What is it that perhaps from the past, whether that's the past or farther back in the past into different existence, what is something that may be impacting the way that I'm processing something currently? That can be, and what is sometimes a strength, right? Because we don't just bring negative experiences. That would be terrible. We don't just bring back negative experiences or unfinished business from past lives. We also bring, in my opinion, we bring strengths and lessons learned and these types of things. And how could that come forward to help with whatever I'm kind of struggling with at the moment? And then how am I going to push that way forward? So I do that a lot personally. I think it's really interesting because you can just tell when something is a deeper struggle, right? So you might be struggling with a situation in the current present, but you can just have that sense that there's just something deeper at play here. I keep cycling back to the same situation. Why do I keep cycling back to the same situation? And then I might do a reading on sort of what could be something that I just still haven't quite processed. I use playing cards in combo with tarot and oracle cards. Yes. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons I really like this one, Miss Ossette, the Arcana Tarot playing cards, because it's tarot. So let me expand my tarot. Who's out there fighting? They're fighting. Oh, they're on the phone walking down the street. Really loud fighting with somebody. I don't know why I'm whispering. I can't hear me on the street. Anyways, that's one of the reasons I love this deck, because it gives the playing card aspect, the tarot aspect, and I have tarot and oracle as well. So yeah, it's fascinating, and I think that it's more. It can be more. I guess my point is that it can be more than just this big past life reading that you do, which is fantastic, and I love them. I've done them for everybody I know, and things like that. So that's really great, and it's powerful to get that maybe big message. But the point, I guess, that I'm trying to make is that you can also do it in smaller areas where you just feel like, okay, why do I keep, can you? Oh, you can only hear him. I know. Mr. Jones, I think he's mocking me, but it's true. I would be like, okay, let's just go carry this microphone over to the window and listen in on what is going on. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones. I get so fascinated. Anyways, my point is, I'm going to try to wrap this up so we can move on to chatting. But my point is that there's other ways to use that. If you do believe, if you do have this sense of your soul having been somewhere before now and going somewhere after, I don't think it's a one and done kind of thing. Like if you feel like you keep revisiting the same, you find yourself back. Think about the whip card in Lenormand, right? The whip card in Lenormand is about how we slip into these patterns, right? We slip into these patterns that we fall into. And it's like very much when the whip card comes up, it's like, okay, it's a warning, just don't slide back into the same pattern. It didn't work for you in the past. It's not going to work for you now. Well, that can happen more than just in this current life. What are past patterns that perhaps we feel over across our lifetime? We say, oh, why do I keep ending up with the same kind of person? That didn't work out for me. Every time I've done it, it doesn't work out, right? And now here I am playing out this pattern one more time. Or I find myself in a situation where people are taking advantage of me, and it happens over and over and over again. Why do I keep, I know this isn't good for me. I know this isn't going to be a good situation, but I keep finding turning myself back into this pattern again. So when you get that sense of like, okay, I'm playing this out again, how, to doing a reading that kind of has a couple positions where you can pull something from how, is there something that is in a past experience of past life experience that may be impacting this, both positively and negative? What is a negative thing that you might have pulled forward, or unfinished thing that you pulled forward that is impacting it? And then what is a strength that you might have learned, or a lesson that you might have learned that you need to remember so that you can break yourself out of the pattern? So it's something that you can use on more than just a grand scale of, was I Cleopatra in a past life? I think I'm doing a very poor job of explaining what I'm trying to say, so I'm going to go back to shuffling the cards. Tiger, yell out the window. Can you put your phone on speaker? If I have to listen to one side, can I have the whole side? Can I get the whole story? Oh, I'm so bad. But look, if you're going to walk down the street screaming into a phone, you open yourself up to being heard. You are no longer being private. So I don't feel bad. Okay, let's pull a card for the week. Let's pull a card for the week. Past life readers are trying to get the whole story. Yeah, because there's more than just this piece, right? There's more than just this piece. And somebody had said, what's interesting is, and I totally believe this, and I've seen this show up in readings, this concept of, is it necessarily beep, 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 right? Is this past life, present life, future life? I don't believe in the linear mode, right? I really do believe in this cyclical. If I would look at a timeline, right, where you have this, here's this timeline here. My timeline would look like cycles, like shoot, shoot, shoot. It's rolling, kind of like waves coming to shore and rolling and rolling and rolling. That's how I personally would see time moving. So the fact of the matter is that this is the nerd mode. This is what gets me excited about like past life readings and just past lives in general, right? So if I do believe that, which I do, if my purpose of doing a past life reading for myself or for another person is that I can, in this past life experience, can sit across the table from me in this current life experience, and we can have a conversation. The ahas that I get here can potentially, if we want to break our minds a little bit, can potentially impact that past life as well as vice versa. And then and of course it does the future, because anything that I'm doing now, of course, my next life is going to have an impact on. But is it just that linear, or is it cycling back and you're then actually having impact on that, and then the life cycles round and round and round we go. Oh, I love this kind of stuff. Let's just break our minds a little bit and go all circular. Get out of the straight line modes of thinking and go circular. Yes, like exactly, Lucy. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, I'm going to pull this card because we're never going to get this card pulled. At this rate, we're going to get no cards pulled. All right, let's pull. So this is our weekly card. This is kind of weekly energy. He definitely needs a bigger tank. He definitely does. He has grown tremendously. He generally does that when he wants food. He has already eaten. He's a pig. And I'm trying to keep him eating healthy amounts because I love him so much. And so he generally gets very acrobatic when he wants food. And he really can't have any more food right now because he will eat as much as you want to give him. Oh, goldfish are amazing, but they really do need bigger tanks than what they will tell you at the fish store. Well, let me just tell you that, because he was very little when I got him. And they're all like, oh, this is the perfect size tank because XYZ is this many inches per water per. No, look at how big he is. Look at how big he is. I may do that today. But anyways, but let me just say that goldfish are, I know that they grow, but they were like, this is the problem. They tell you like, okay, this is going to be the good sized tank for this fish. You know, where you get like, say, a beta. Betas don't grow as much, right? They, you know, you can get one tank. They kind of stay in the tank that they're going to go in, and they do pretty well. That's usually what I have as betas. I haven't had a goldfish in a long time. This guy grew very, very rapidly. Very rapidly, but they're very smart, and so it's so important. I know there's a couple. I'm trying to think where it is. I'm being very distractible. I apologize. There is a country, I want to say it's like Norway or Sweden or somewhere over there, that it's illegal to have only one goldfish, because they are, because they're very smart. Like, they are close to being as smart, not as smart as dolphins, but there is a connection between that. He knows me. He will come to the tank, up to the tank to, he did have a brother who passed away. So I didn't, and now I'm afraid to put another one with him because I feel like he'll eat it or something. Anyways, they know who you are. He will go and hide if somebody else comes up to the tank that he doesn't know. You know, they're smart. They really are smart, and they're fabulous fish to have. The key is if you're going to have a smaller tank, you've got to like, I change the water every 3 days, not all of it, but 25%, and that you have to with goldfish because they are pooping machines. Anyways, this just became, we moved from past lives to goldfish. Past lives to goldfish, because he's distracting people. He's distracting people. Anyways, I'm gonna pull this card before Percy. I had two, so they were Molly and Percy. If you watch Critical Role, which is a D&D show, Molly and Percy were two characters. Now he's got another one, Caduceus, of one of the actors. And so there was Molly and Percy, but now we have, I know we didn't cover whether we reincarnate throughout different species. So maybe I was a goldfish in a past life. Who knows? Maybe I'm going to become one. I don't know entirely how I feel. That's one of those things that to me is open. Certainly there are, I believe, certainly in Buddhist reincarnation thoughts, the idea you could reincarnate as anything is definitely included there. I'm trying to think of another religion or ideology that uses reincarnation in cross species as well. I know they exist. Would we have those straight memories of that? I don't know. That's one of those things that to me is open. Could I have been a mermaid in a past life? Yes. Yes. Definitely. Anyways, we went from like really good and focused on a topic to Kelly having no brains. I don't understand where we went. You can, Simon, I often recommend it, but let me just recommend this. If you get into watching Critical Role, start with season 2. Do not start with season 1, because season 1, they had been playing for years and it was like bad audio because they were just getting started. It was before it exploded into being a really cool thing. So if you're going to start watching Critical Role, which I highly suggest, start with season 2, because you see them start at the very beginning and work their way through everything. And it's just better audio. Everything's just better about it. So that's what I would say. Okay, let's go to our one. We have 9 of Swords, for our card of the week. And the quote is by Voltaire: "The longer we dwell on our misfortunes, the greater is their power to harm us." So this is an interesting one, right? Because some of us are fairy now. Well, that's my genetic. My genetic history has a fairy queen, as we've talked about, Tammy Pie. So that's I get that in my genetics as well as potentially past lives. So the number 9. So let's pause for a minute here. The 9 of Swords, we often see and we're like, oh no, it's like, it's the nightmare card, right? So if you read with the Rider-Waite-Smith system, it can be sort of known as the nightmare card. The number 9 is a really dynamic number. It's a lot, right? It's almost to the conclusion of 10, but it's not quite there. It's a lot of energy that is bouncing around, right? And so and of course, the swords are our mind, right? It's our mental space. So the 9 of Swords is about a lot going on in the head that has the potential to exaggerate things. It has a potential, if we have a very real fear or a very real anxiety or a situation that's not good around us, it's going to get exaggerated into something that is a nightmare quality. We're going to wake up in the middle of the night sweating over this, this bill that we have to pay. We don't quite have the money to cover it. It's a very real problem that we've now exaggerated into. It's kind of taking over our mind. We can't deal with things properly if it's exaggerated. We've got to bring it back down, right, to what's the real problem, and not deal with the exaggerated form of things. But this can also happen to positive things, right? Let's say you're really excited about a new project, you're really excited about starting something, and it can get exaggerated and your brain is bouncing off the wall because you're so excited about it, but you're not necessarily going to get anywhere because this energy is just all over the place. You got to, okay, rein it in now. That's the exciting part, but now rein it into something manageable, right? And so that's what, for me, the 9 of Swords is about. It's about it's crazy brain. It's the Birds card in Lenormand. It's my crazy brain. Things are out of proportion. Let's bring it into proportion so that we can deal with that's not saying there's not something bad, but deal with the real reality of the problem, not the expanded version. Deal with the reality of, okay, rein it in. Now, what are you going to step forward and to do about this exciting energy? So, I just would I would encourage people when they see the 9 of Swords to not instantly go to the nightmare, but instantly think, how is my crazy brain letting things get out of proportion so that I can't actually make some kind of progress, right? With the 9 of Swords. This is going to be very applicable to me this week, I can see. And then the quote is talking about how if we're really focused, same sort of idea of what I just said, right? If we're really focused on our problem, in this case, our problem, but I think this goes either way. If we're just hyperly focused on something, it has that potential to get exaggerated and overtake our mind. That's all we can think of. That's all we can focus on. Whereas if we kind of just let things simmer maybe a little bit, step back and away, right? The answer to these is often the Tower card in Lenormand, or the shake-up energy of the Tower in Tarot, but step back for a minute, the 4 of Swords, right? So if 9 of Swords comes, what would be the sort of solution to the 9 of Swords would be the 4 of Swords. Step back for a minute, get a breath, sort of reorient your brain, and then step back into it so it doesn't become something larger than life. So that's something to think about as we process through this week that we are in. If we start to get crazy brain, take a breath, step back, right? Step back for a minute, take a breath, and deal with what is there, not the exaggerated forms of things. So that, I think, in a nutshell, for me, that's what I take away from that. And that is a message I need to hear all the time, because I literally have chronic crazy brain. And so I could just have a 9 of Swords stuck up somewhere to remind me for my entire life. And that would be good. Miss Bunnykiss. Oh yes, Miss Bunnykiss has had a question earlier regarding. I was asking about I Ching. I don't recall that being on your list of divination methods. I Ching was a divination method that I used for a very long time. I want to say it's so hard for me to know. It would have probably been prior to tarot. I'll have to go back and figure it out. My friend always helps me figure out the dates because I bought my first tarot deck. I visited her in Maine. And so and we know some things that were going on around the time, so I can kind of guesstimate when the date was for that. But I Ching was definitely when I was studying Taoism and Buddhism, which would have been before that. So yes, I have dealt with I Ching. I prefer casting it. The Tao Oracle is one of my all-time favorite oracles. It's amazing. I do prefer to cast. If you're interested in the I Ching, I truly believe that Annabelle Wen's, you can buy her course. I want to say it's $40, but I could be wrong. But in that you get her translated text, because that's the biggest problem with, obviously, as a Western person. I can do yarrow stalks. I have a set of sticks actually right here. So I have a set of sticks that I made that I can cast this way, but I prefer coins. But anyways, part of the problem is obviously the translation is difficult to get a good translation. And so I love her translation. She actually gave me access to her translation before she put it out. And so I used it. I used to have it up in my shop. I don't anymore, but I used her translation. She gave me the document version of it. So I used it for quite a while before she put it out where you could print it. But with that, you can actually print it like on Lulu and have what I think to be is a very good, solid translation to have to work with. Because that to me is the key. As somebody who does not, can't read original source, getting a good source that you feel comfortable with and trust, I think is pretty key to that. So that is, so personally, $45 for her translation of the book, because I already knew how to cast it, so I didn't really need a course on how to cast it. But I think paying for that, just if you're somebody who's really into I Ching and really wants to work with it, I think it's well worth that just for the translation. But that's my opinion. Okay, so I answered that question. I want to make sure that I say this because I don't want to forget. Tuesday is October 1st, so we're starting Embrace the Magical. Embrace the Magical, folks. So if you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know that we do Embrace the Magical in October. And I'm going to be putting a thing up on Instagram today, kind of pre-thinking about it, right? But I don't know. Does anybody know if Zach is on? I don't know if Zach's on. I don't know if Bart is listening and can text me. I don't know if we're going into... here, Patrick just sent it to me because he helps me make these things. So I'm going to be putting out a little thing that gives us our topics that's starting. And we are such nerds. It's so true, Tammy Pie. I don't know if this is our 4th year. Maybe Simon might know too. I don't know. I think this might be our 4th year. I'm horrible with anything regarding time. I think it's our 4th. Tammy, have you probably been around too? I'm guessing it's our 4th. Anyways, 2016, Do you know, I wonder if we did it in 16, 17, 18. Yeah, I bet this is our 4th year. Anyway, so all of October is Embrace the Magical. The concept behind it is that we do a lot of serious talk about divination, which is important, right? I teach divination of lots of different kinds. I do get readings for people for as part my profession. So I take divination and these topics very seriously, but the fact of the matter is we also need to embrace the magic that is, right? We need to enjoy the power, and it doesn't diminish the power to appreciate and revel in and have joy in all things magical. And so that's kind of the point of Embrace the Magical. I don't believe I'm going to do a daily like pull thing. I'm breaking it into 4 weeks this time around. Now I am going to do a daily pull, but it is on a particular topic, but I don't know that I'm going to do the daily, because those are, people stress over them. I stress over them. I never do them. So we're going to have 4 weeks. The first week is Embrace the Magic of the Cosmos. So above, we're going to talk about, and I'm going to try to come up with like 4 decks. So I'm going to use a deck for each of those weeks. So the first thing that we're going to want to kind of think about in the next couple of days is, what is a deck that for you embraces the cosmos, right? Embraces the heavens, embraces astrology and those types of things. Like, what to you embraces the idea of what's above. And it could be tarot, it can be oracle, it could be a tarot and an oracle deck, whatever. You can also just take one deck and use that the whole time. Do what you want to do. These are just a fun way for us to play together. It is not supposed to be stressful. It is not supposed to be, if I don't do every single day something to do with Embrace the Magical, the world is going to end, because it will not. It's just us being able to play together in a topic and enjoy the magic there. So that's the first week. And I'm gonna put this out on Instagram and my Facebook page, and I'll put it in the YouTube community. That way people have it. And I'm gonna do a daily draw too. I'm just not gonna have a specific question for each day. I'm gonna put out, so on the beginning of each week, so on October 1st, I'm gonna put out a spread for the week. And so there'll be a spread for the week. I'm gonna put a video out with what decks that I'm gonna be using and doing that spread. So we'll have a spread for the week, and then I'm doing daily pulls with that particular deck. So again, week 1 will be Embrace the Magical of the Cosmos, the magic of the cosmos, of astrology, the stars, what's above, whatever that means to you. Week 2 is going to be dropping down into earth, right? Embrace the magical of the world, of earth, of nature, these kinds of things. What's a deck that to you speaks of embracing the magic of the world below, right? So above, below. And then week 3 is going to be Embracing the Magic of Divination. So this is just going to be, for me, this is probably when I'm going to, use other kind of divination systems and things like that. And then week 4 is going to be the joy of just magic. That's where all my Halloween decks are going to come out and all that kind of good stuff. And just the joy of magic in general. So I will be putting out a video on each of the first days of the weeks, whatever that might be, whatever those days end up being, putting those out with a spread for us to do. I'll be doing daily polls on Instagram, which will be put up. So we'll have the videos that will be once a week for people who are just YouTube people. There will be, for me, posts on Instagram as well as on my Facebook page. So in one of those 3 areas, you probably, if you're following me, you probably follow one of those areas, so you should be able to do it. On Instagram, if you do use Instagram, make sure you use the tag #EmbraceTheMagical, really on any of the formats, because then we can search for those. If you put #EmbraceTheMagical, I'll type it. Then everybody can search that and find other people's posts, including myself, because I like to be able to see it. That will help us find it. And so, yeah. So start thinking about your decks. Like, what is the decks that speak to you of the cosmos, of the above? What is the decks that make you think about the as below, on this world, in nature? What are the what is, when you just think about pure divination, what is that deck for you? It might be your soul deck, right? And then then we're just going to get into the pure magic of things in the week. We also generally do a 12-hour live chat around Halloween sometime. I'll have to look at my calendar and figure out exactly what date that might be. But we do a 12-hour chat. And yes, we have people who have done them all 12 hours. I know Miss Kaleidoscope has. I don't know if Zach maybe has. I don't know, but I know maybe Miss Veronica. I'm not sure, but we do have people who have been at every single 12-hour live chat and made it through the 12 hours, which is crazy. Last year, I think I did a live D&D with my daughter and Kelly Bear to break up the 12 hours for me. We did a couple of the hours that we did a D&D episode too, but yeah, it's a long one. It's a long one. So I will get more on that date as I look through my calendar. So people lose their minds and I lose my voice. People lose their minds and I lose my voice. And my daughter usually brings me food. So yeah, so I'll be putting that up on Instagram so that you have the topics. On Instagram, Facebook, I'll put it up in the YouTube community. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can push community and it has like where you can put posts. So I'll put the 4-week topics there. That way you have them. And I'll also, again, be doing a video each week with the spreads that we're going to be working with that week so that you can play along with that even if you don't use Instagram or Facebook. So I wanted to make sure I got that out because Tuesday is October 1st. I will definitely be thinking about, obviously I'm going to be using my friend Patrick's astrology deck, no question, on week 1. Tarot-wise, I have a Cosmos tarot that I need to pull out because I think that's probably the one that I'm going to use. I think it's a tarot and oracle deck that I just kind of shove it all together and combine. So I think for tarot, I'll be using that Cosmos tarot. And then for oracle, I'll be using Patrick's astrology deck. That's probably about as far as I think I've gotten into thinking about what decks I'm going to use. But I love it because a lot of times people will post if you're going to pull out. Some people are going to use all kind of Halloween themed decks for theirs as well. Take a picture and put like your deck choice. That's one of my favorite parts of Embrace the Magical is when people kind of put out the decks that they are pulling to use. So I am excited to see those. And I will do mine once I kind of sit down and think about which ones I'm going to use. And then just because we're talking about this, we follow up Embrace the Magical October, and November is Into the Wild Woods. And I'm definitely doing Into the Wild Woods again. I think this is our 3rd year for Into the Wild Woods. I think this is going to be our 3rd year for Into the Wild Woods. And that's much more going into folk tales and Into the Woods, which I absolutely am excited about. So that will be in November. And it will be the same sort of setup. I'll have 4 weeks, themes, and going into and spreads for each of the weeks and that kind of stuff. So I know, Simon, the years are accumulating. The years are accumulating. So that's the next 2 months. There we go. Embrace the Magical is October and Into the Wild Woods is November. It's become a thing. So we do our things because we are creatures of habit and we enjoy doing the things over and over again. So I wanted to get that out so I didn't forget. But yeah, excited about that. I love Embrace the Magical. What else do I want to talk about? I've had 3 decks. Let's just talk about this. I'm going to pull this over here because I'm going to do a walkthrough of this one. I did a blog post about the changing winds of September. I've had kind of a weird, not a weird September, but it's been an interesting September emotionally wise and kind of working through some things. And so in the course of that, I've had 3 decks that have really, they're unusual. Well, 2 of them are unusual decks for me, but I've had 3 decks that have really come to the forefront in September. So I have them right here. And so why not just throw those out there real quick? One of them was a kind of surprise, and I haven't done a walkthrough of this deck, but I'm going to do it. This is called it's by Denise Lynn, and it's called the Sacred Destiny Oracle. I would use this for our pull today, but I literally just put them all back into order so that I could do a walkthrough. So I don't want to shuffle them because it's alphabetical. There's no numbers, and I just put them all in order. So I'm not going to use it, even though I would like to. This is very surreal art, but watch my, I'm going to do a walkthrough, so I promise walkthrough will be coming in the next day or 2. This deck, it's almost, you could miss it. If you didn't read the guidebook, you could miss where I think the power of this deck really lies. It's absolutely beautiful. So it's just gorgeous. The colors are what caught me. It's kind of a collage, like a digital collage type deck. And the colors are really rich and really vibrant and really beautiful. So, that's definitely there. But each of these cards, so on the deck itself, it just says the keyword. That to me was a mistake on the creators, because each of these are actually also associated with sort of a landscape that you're kind of orienting yourself into this a wildflower meadow, or into the ocean, or into the mountain range, or into the swamplands, or something like that. They're each one associated with a space that you are entering into. And that is where the power of this deck lies, in my opinion. And I really wish they had put the landscape on the card. I'm probably going to write it on here, because then I can always just trim the whole thing if I want to. So I think I'm going to write the landscape on the top, but I need to do the walkthrough first. But this deck has been, for September for me, been a very supportive deck. It's called Sacred Destiny Oracle, Mr. Jones. I just ran into it at Barnes & Noble's, and I thought, I'm not really much into digital collage, but it just, something about it spoke to me, and then it just, anyways, I really, this has been really profound for me, this in a support fashion. The other deck so I'm going to show you 3 decks for September that have been just really influential for me. Jen had sent me she was clearing out her decks, and she had sent me 2 decks. They're art decks. And it's kind of, if you go to this person's website, it's called Elizabeth on Earth. She also has a beautiful Instagram account. But it's kind of, I don't know if they're really meant to be oracle decks. I think so. There's no guidebook. There's no anything to do with it. The backs look like this. These are definitely not my type of deck, because it's lots of, I don't want to use these 3 yet. Okay. It's lots of women, kind of, it's, again, that digital art where you've got kind of floating women and things like that. Lots of pretty women in the posts, and they're really cool, but they're I wouldn't normally pick up a deck like this for the most part. This deck for September has been rough in a good way. It's been that very shadow work. I don't know that there's a name of it. That's my problem, Al. Mr. Jones put a link. it just says Elizabeth on Earth, which is the name of the creator's website. So I don't know that it has a particular, it's not like a deck name. And this is actually two 28 card decks. And I think she just released another 28 card deck. And they kind of seem to be billed more like art decks, but they do have Oracle terms on them. Again, I didn't purchase these. They were sent to me, so I don't know a lot. Oh, thank you, Mr. Jones. Apparently, this that I'm working with is Self-Reflection 1 and 2, and apparently there's a third one. But this deck has really been, if I could say, like shadow work for September for me. It's just been really a shadow. Yeah, that's how I would feel too, Al. I would not have bought it, but this deck has just stood forward like the Dryad of Kinship and all of these mushrooms. It's this permissions with this, like, almost like it's a mannequin. Anyways, I don't know, but I'm going to show you a couple. So I just did a reading with it. I've done quite a few. This card right here, because in a nutshell, September's just been a little bit difficult in terms of grief work with my son's passing. Don't know why. Again, I already did a blog post about it. As much as I want to go into it, I've had a lot of reoccurring dreams that I needed to deal with. And this mother card, where she is tied to this moon like this, has shown up in so many readings for me. Again, this is just readings I've done for myself. This card has shown up, let's say out of maybe 6, and just 3 card readings that I've been doing. And it's shown up maybe out of 6 readings, it's shown up like 3 or 4 times. It's been quite obnoxious. The last time it came up with, it started with the Dryad of Death and Rebirth, and then into the Dryad of Nurture, and then into the Mother card. I mean, it's really been a powerful, shadowy. I don't tend to be one that says this is a great deck for shadow work, because I just think all decks are. But this has functioned as kind of a shadow work deck, whereas this has been a very supportive deck. And then the last deck for September for me has been the Ancestral Path Tarot. This deck has been for very grounding. It's like, okay, I'm doing all of this shadowy stuff here, and I got this other over here, and then I've gotten so many. I'm trying to pull one. I've gotten so many from the Sacred Circles, which is the Pentacles or the Earth suit, and it's been very much a grounding deck of just sort of, okay, yep, you're doing this work over here. Now let's do some. Let's re-ground you and recenter you, is kind of what this particular deck has done this month. So yeah, this is this Ancestral Path. So those are the 3 decks for me personally have been a powerful theme. I love this 6 of Sacred Circles. It's just been a really powerful. These are 3 decks that have been really shown up in September for me. So that's random, because I was thinking about that last night, and so I thought I would throw that out there. See, I keep putting aside the whip card scythe, and the tower cards are being so obnoxious this month. Oh no. I actually love the scythe card, and the tower card in Lenormand is a good card. The tower card in Lenormand is saying you need to get up above the situation. There's clearly something you need to see better, right? You need to see the bigger picture. Step it back, right? Step back and get up so you can see the bigger picture and get past that. That way you can see past the whip that you keep falling into the same patterns. Get past that see past that with the tower card. She gets it, but she doesn't want to hear it anymore. I hear you. Okay. So yeah, so those are the 3 decks that I don't know where we were going with that. Yes, let's pull from this. Somebody, I think it was Tammy, were you asking about this one? We can pull from the Literary Witches. I'm enjoying the Literary Witches for sure. And that's definitely going to come out and grace the magical October for sure. Do I have these separated or mixed? I have them mixed right now. Pokemon. No, that card. Oh, it looked like Pokemon. Yeah, she's talking about, I probably can't find it now. The Ace of Drums looks like a Pokemon ball. Oh, I'll never find it again because that's just asking way too much. Here it is. Ah, there we go. Tammy was saying the Ace of Sacred Circles looks like a Pokemon ball. I'm pretty sure that's what she's saying. Okay, now I got these all out of whack here, so I make sure I have them in the right. Nope, I just messed them up. Let's turn this way. Oops, and let me scroll down here. Okay. I know. This has been kind of a wonky, as always. You know what? Live chats are allowed to be wonky. That's okay. Have some more coffee. Join me with the caffeine. Coffee with pumpkin spice. I know all the memes come out about how people get so sick of hearing about pumpkin spice this, pumpkin spice that, you know, all the pumpkin spice that's going on in the world at this time. And there's all kinds of memes and jokes about people with the pumpkin spice, but it is delicious and it is exciting because you can't get it other times of the year. So I live in an area that follows, that follows the seasons. And we do have a very distinctive fall. And so pumpkins do, you know, grow and abound all around us. And so pumpkin spice definitely do come into play in fall. It's as irritating as it might be for everybody. Goodbye, Viola. I'm glad you were able to make it for live. Even if it was a little bit of hectic live, it was like past life, fish, and then more past life, and now let's talk about decks. Let's talk about Embrace the Magical, like it's squirrel, which I'm really good. All right, let's pull a reading here because I know I'm getting close to the end of our 2 hours, and I want to make sure we get a Hello Miss Whale song. I know it's the only sad thing I have about I do try to stay focused that first hour because otherwise we would never get anywhere. But I do kind of miss who comes in and out because I'm trying to stay focused on the topic. So that's one thing I do miss. But all in all, I'm enjoying the topic and chat combo format. So I intend on keeping it this way for the foreseeable future because I'm just enjoying it. And that's a good enough reason to do something, right? All right, so let's pull. So I'm pulling from we did our card of the week, the Nine of Swords. And then for our Oracle to wrap things up, I'm using the Literary Witches Oracle. I do have a walkthrough of this up. I have trimmed it, so this is a trimmed version that you're going to see. And somebody asked about talking about the Literary Witches, so that's why we're doing this one. Whale Song made it from the start. Just in time for a hectic let's bounce all over the place, Miss Whale Song. All right. Take a breath. Wings. Boar, strength, and praying mantis. So that is interesting. We didn't get any authors. So this is more like a little bit of a Lenormand reading, right? So wings to me, now we'll go through and look at this. I know people like to see for how you might read this according to the author. So we'll look at that in a minute. But for a moment, we're just going to wing it. See what I did, right? For me, obviously, wings are to do with air. They're to do with flight. They're often to do with the idea of the mind. They're firmly rooted in the seeds of the mind. For me personally, so when things have like birds and wings that are these type of oracle type decks, then my mind is always going to the air. They're always going to the sense of clarity. They're always going in those directions, taking wing, taking flight, letting our mind take flight. But this idea of the mind, but then it's combined with the boar. Now, boars are about strength. So a lot of so like if you read a lot of Celtic mythology, right, you're not going to have lions in a strength card because there are not lions. There were never lions. I say never say never, but there were not lions in the region that the Celts or the Norse existed, right? And so you will often hear, there will often be inclusions of boars in those, and this is that sort of powerful strength energy that you will see is with boars. And so for me, when I see a boar, it really does tie into this idea of strength, determination, maybe even a little bit of stubbornness, that type of energy here, but very similar to what you would see in like a strength card that would normally have lions. It would be something that I would go to with boars when you're talking about Celtic mythology and things of that nature. And then we have the praying mantis. Now, what's interesting is that the first thing that came to my mind with the praying mantis is actually intellect, which is interesting. I don't know why, because I don't really have any associations with praying mantises. So let's take a look on this one, because I don't know a lot about praying. Wit, fun. Like I see, I don't agree with that one. I don't think. Wit, manipulation, and fun. So what do I know about praying mantises? I know that the females are, I think the females eat their, do those female praying mantises eat the male praying mantises after they mate? That's what's that's what comes into my head with praying mantises. But there is always, to me, something very intellectual. They have when you look at them up close, the way that their heads are shaped, and the way that their eyes are, and in the ways they walk. I have seen praying mantises in real life. We do have them around here. I believe it's illegal to kill a praying mantises in our area, but then they do eat their mates after they eat it. So I don't really think fun is a good term to put with that, right? So it would have to me much more, I don't know, Elle. I don't feel like eating your mate should come across as being something witty or fun. I see him as very methodical, very observant, and obviously very tied to cycles of life and death. Because if you think about the mating process as being one of needing the, as Corey says, needing a vast amount of energy to be able to then create life, and the way that they get this is a natural cycle for the praying mantis. The natural cycle of that is eating their mate that is both giving life and sustaining life at the same time. So that is part of that natural life cycle. So I would not say, if you use this deck, wit or fun would manipulate, and I wouldn't even say manipulation, right? Because then they're talking about more of like that black widow, that idea of a woman who might manipulate a man into her life as a lover and then kill them, right? This is a natural cycle of sustenance and sacrifice, as Sherry said, and it's part of the cycle of this thing. So that to me is not witty, it's not fun, and it's not manipulation. It's part of that natural process. So really thinking about what are those life-sustaining things, right? Where we are taking from one energy pool and we are using that to sustain the creation of another energy pool. It's the same thing with a plant that might die off, go back into the go back into the earth, and then something is born again out of that. If a creature die, again, nature isn't so pretty, right? We would like to think of things as really beautiful and esoteric, and we think about, oh yes, life and death and rebirth, like this is all part of the cycle. But when we see, say, cards that may have a dead fox on it out in the woods, well, that dead fox in its natural cycle of things is going to feed whatever killed it and ate from it. It's going to feed whatever scavengers come and eat the fox. It is also going to disintegrate back into the earth and feed the grass and the soil and the trees around it. It is part of the cycle of nature for this to happen. So really thinking about, okay, we've got the wing, which is talking about, again, the mind, the air taking flight out of, right, the strength of this cycle. So our mind is able to swing free and think about and process and do all the things that we need to do because of the strength that we gain from this whole process of life, death, and rebirth that is part of the natural order of things. Certain things die away and certain things grow again from those deaths and from those falling away. Think about even the time period we're in. We're in fall. The trees are going to start to change colors. In my area, they're going to start to change colors and they're going to drop away in order to sustain the tree throughout the winter time. And then it's going to get its leaves again. These are all processes that are part of nature, and we can gain strength from those things that we need to let go of and have fall away so they can sustain a new life. What do you have to let go of, right? What do you have to accept is going to go away so that something new can be born from that? And there are so many ways in which you can take flight when you gain strength from that cycle and understanding that things are always going to be changing. We're going to be letting go. We're going to be losing things and gaining new things all of the time. So that's an interesting one. I think it's also a good example of how, oracle decks that give you keywords and things like that, they're just suggestions, right? They're just suggestions that may go with the person who created them has a certain, something in mind. They have an association for whatever reason. And so they put these keywords on there, which is great. And it can help us to start to land somewhere. But it doesn't mean you have to roll with those. How do you see wings? When you see a boar, what does a boar say to you? What do you process through when you think about praying mantises? Especially these types of systems that are very Lenormand-y, where it's a small symbol that can have for anything from small concepts to big concepts. And then yes, exactly, Sherry. Then how do you weave that story there? I love these as examples of the facts that you can take really simple symbologies. You can get a quick and simple message, but then you can also start to unpack those things and don't feel bound by what a guidebook may or may not say. Go with your instincts. Go with what sounds right to you. And especially when it comes to animals, go to the animals in nature. What do birds generally tell you when you look at birds, when you watch birds, when you read about birds? What does that say to you? When you're looking at boars, look up lore and things of that nature about boars. Where do they come from? Where are they mostly at? How do they act? Blah, 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 blah. Praying mantises. Let's think about what does a praying mantis do? And it can start to give you insights into what the messages can be outside of just having, say, a dove for peace, like that we're going to see in everything, right? So every deck that has a dove in it is probably going to say peace, but there's probably more that we can unpack about a dove than just peace. And so taking, that's just kind of a ramble. Anyways, hello, Holly. Cute little rabbit. I'm actually really enjoying this deck. I will say that I primarily use it by pulling one of the authors and then pulling three of these, of the Lenormand style, fortune-telling style decks. that's been my favorite way to use it so far. Your mileage may vary and you may prefer them to be all mixed together, but I've enjoyed kind of sinking into one of the authors and where that kind of gives the bigger theme, and then having the three fortune telling style. I don't know what to call those. They're more symbol based cards as sort of a 3-card reading underneath that. And that's been my preferred method of using this deck, but I'm really loving it. I'm definitely going to pull it out for Embrace the Magical, because what is more magical than literary witches? Okay, everybody, I am going to wrap this up because I have been talking for 2 hours now. And as I said, if you just came in, we're starting Embrace the Magical October 1st. I'll put information up today on YouTube communities, my Facebook, Truth and Story Facebook and Instagram. So whatever space that you like to follow, you can find the information there. If you participate in Embrace the Magical, make sure that you hashtag it. I'll put the information there, but hashtag it so that we can all find it, because one of the things we enjoy about Embrace Magical is being able to see everybody's decks and see what they're doing and see what their responses are to the spreads and things like that. So make sure you hashtag it and watch for those. And I'll put those up in all 3 places today so that you can start thinking about each of those weeks and what decks or systems or things that you plan on using for those. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. We shifted. Yesterday was my birthday, and so I shifted it over today so that I could my daughter and I did a escape. Have you played the escape room boxes? Like, you can do them at home. My daughter and I did one for her birthday, and so we did another one for my birthday that was Finding Sunken Treasure. It wasn't as good as the Abandoned. We did Abandoned Cabin by Escape the Box, I think is the brand. It's a German couple that make them, and we really liked the Abandoned Cabin one. The one yesterday was the Sunken Treasure, and it wasn't as good as the Abandoned Cabin one, but they're still a lot of fun and leave you feeling either really unintelligent sometimes or really, really smart when you do get something and you're like feeling like, oh yeah, I'm Einstein underneath it all because I just got that puzzle. So we had a lot of fun. Ate some delicious Chinese food and some delicious, I got strawberry cheesecake ice cream. So that's why we're here on Sunday instead of Saturday, if you're all confused. I'm going to go and stop talking. Goodbye. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.